December 12, 1862. The Yazoo River, Mississippi. The USS Cairo, a terrifying ironclad beast of the Union Navy, is steaming upriver, invincible to enemy cannon fire. But in a split second, two violent explosions rock the hull, not from enemy ships, but from below. In less than 12 minutes, this technological marvel vanishes beneath the muddy water, becoming the first ship in history to be sunk by an electrically detonated mine. She was lost to the world, buried in silt, forgotten for a century. But when she was finally pulled from the grave in 1964, she didn't just bring up wood and iron, she brought the entire year of 1862 back with her. This is the story of the ultimate Civil War time capsule. When we think of the Civil War, we usually imagine lines of infantry in blue and gray marching across open fields at Gettysburg or Antietam. But one of the most vicious, claustrophobic, and technologically innovative theaters of the war wasn't on land at all. It was on the water specifically, the muddy, winding currents of the Mississippi River. Control the Mississippi, and you cut the Confederacy in half. To do this, the Union didn't just need boats. They needed monsters. They needed the city-class ironclads. Today, we are looking at the USS Cairo. She was a hard-luck ship with a short life, a violent death, and a resurrection that went. Well, we'll get to that. This is the story of the ship that refused to stay dead. To understand the Cairo, you have to look at her design. In 1861, the Union commissioned James Eads and naval constructor Samuel Polk to build a fleet that could survive close-range cannon fire from riverbanks. The result was the city-class gunboats. They were 175 feet long, 51 feet wide, and perhaps most importantly, they had a draft of only 6 feet. That means these massive iron beasts could float in water just up to a tall man's chin. They were wide, flat-bottomed, and covered in 2.5 inches of iron plating. They looked so strange, like floating armored boxes, that the sailors nicknamed them Pook Turtles. The Cairo was commissioned in January 1862. She packed a serious punch, 13 heavy guns, including 8-inch smoothbores and 32-pounders. She was a floating fortress designed to terrorize Confederate shore batteries. But she had a fatal flaw. While her sides were armored, her hull, the bottom, was made of wood. And in 1862, the Confederacy was about to exploit that weakness with a new, terrifying weapon. December 12, 1862. The Cairo is part of an expedition up the Yazoo River, a tributary of the Mississippi, just north of Vicksburg. The mission is to clear Confederate Ministan, called torpedoes, to open the path for an attack on N Bluff. Her captain, Lieutenant Commander Thomas O. Selfridge, Jr., is aggressive. He spots a few floating jugs on the water buoys, marking the mines, and orders the Cairo forward to destroy them. But the Confederates hiding on the riverbank are watching. These weren't just contact mines. They were wired to a galvanic battery on the shore. As the Cairo passes over the trap, a Confederate soldier pushes a plunger. Boom! 2 explosions rip through the ship. One smashes the port quarter, the other obliterates the bow. The shockwave lifts the massive ironclad right out of the water. The water rushes in instantly. There is no saving her. Selfridge drives the ship toward the bank, but she slides off into deep water. The crew scrambles onto the shore. Amazingly, in a testament to the discipline of the crew, not a single life is lost. But the Cairo, she is gone. Consumed by the Yazoo in just 12 minutes. She settles into the mud, 36 feet down. And as the years turn into decades, the river silt covers her completely. She vanishes from the map and eventually from memory. Fast forward nearly 100 years. It's the 1950s. The Civil War centennial is approaching. And a historian at Vicksburg National Military Park named Edwin Burse is obsessed with finding the lost ship. Everyone thought that Cairo was gone for good, or that the location was unknown. But Burse, along with 2 friends, Don Jacks and Warren Grabo, studied the old maps. They triangulated the likely sinking spot. In 1956, they went out in a small boat. They didn't have sonar. They didn't have high-tech magnetometers. They had a simple military pocket compass. As they drifted over the spot, the needle on the compass swung wild. They had found the Iron Giant, confirming it was the easy part. Getting it out. That would become one of the most heartbreaking salvage operations in history. By 1964, the funds were raised and the dredging began. The plan was to run 3-inch steel cables under the hull and lift the Cairo in one piece. Divers worked in pitch-black, freezing water, tunneling under the ship to thread the cables. It was dangerous, miserable work. But finally, they were ready. The cranes engaged. The cables tightened. The ghostly shape of the Cairo began to break the surface of the water for the first time in 102 years. The crowd cheered. And then, disaster. The engineers had underestimated the physics. The ship was filled with tons of mud. The wood, waterlogged for a century, was soft. The iron armor was heavy. As the ship broke the surface tension, the weight was too much. The steel cables sliced through the wooden hull like a cheese wire, cutting through cheddar. With a sickening crack, the Cairo broke apart. She fell back into the river, shattered into 3 pieces. It was a tragedy for the preservationists. They had to change tactics, lifting the ship out in chunks, the bow, the stern, the boilers, and putting them on barges. It looked like a pile of debris. But what they found inside that debris changed everything. The Yazoo River mud, which had hidden the ship, had also saved it. The silt created an anaerobic environment, no oxygen. That meant no rot. When they started sifting through the mud inside the hull, they didn't just find cannons and cannonballs. They found the sailors' lives, frozen in 1862. They found leather boots, still soft to the touch. Pencils, pipes with tobacco still in the bowl. Rubber combs, a pocket watch. Bottles of medicine, dishes with pork bones from the last meal. They found the weapons fully loaded. The cannons were cleaned out, and the powder inside was still dry enough to burn. Unlike other wrecks, where things drift away or rot, the Cairo was a sealed tomb of daily life. It gave historians an unprecedented look at the common sailor of the Civil War. It wasn't about the generals or the strategy. It was about the guys who wore those boots and smoked those pipes. Today, you can visit the USS Cairo at the Vicksburg National Military Park. She has been reassembled, a wooden skeleton supporting the original iron plating and engines. She sits under a canopy, safe from the river that held her hostage for a century. It is a haunting sight. You can see the scars of the explosion. You can see the terrifying size of the paddle wheel. The Cairo was built to kill, sunk by a new technology, and broken by a botched rescue. But she survived it all to tell us her story. She is the ghost of the Brown Water Navy, and she is finally at rest. If you ever get the chance to go to Vicksburg, do not skip this exhibit. It is surreal to stand next to a ship that was sunk while Lincoln was still president. If you enjoyed this deep dive into naval history, hit that like button and subscribe. And let me know in the comments what other shipwreck would you like us to cover next. Thanks for watching.